The real question is this: are we living a full life? Are we making the right decisions when it comes to children, marriage, work, faith, and so many more issues we deal with daily? How can we know with confidence we are living a full life?
Welcome to the Full Life Crew podcast. We are your hosts and life coaches, Jareth and Deborah Navarre. We will help you find the confidence in those critical areas of your life. Our goal is to help you bring to your family the support, structure, and providence we all desire so we can live the life we want to live. A complete life, a joyful life, a full life.
We are so glad you're here. Now let's get started.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Jareth.
And I'm Deborah.
And we are the Full Life Crew. And today we're talking about when is a good time to send your child to school.
It's a question that every parent has to answer if they have a child. When is the right time to send my child to school? There are so many factors to consider, and there is absolutely one answer that will fit everyone. In this podcast, we are going to explore some of the things you should take into account when making this decision.
Yeah. This is a big one. You know, sending your kid to school too soon can be detrimental or it can be positive. You really have to know your child's personality. I would like to say me personally, and we've actually come to odds against this, correct? We've had issues.
Yes, we have.
For some reason, Deborah's always wanted to start the kids as soon as possible.
Well, hang on. Our first kids, I wanted to start them in school as soon as possible.
Why?
Because I felt they needed socialization. They needed to learn. They needed to get out there, make friends, and be in school.
I've never thought that. I've never thought a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or 5-year-old needed friends. I mean, you have your family, and if they have friends, that's great. But they don't need friends at 3 and 5 years old.
And our first kids, we did start early. And our very first child did absolutely phenomenal. So our first child did great. Like, she went to school, but she had initiative. She wanted it. Like, she went and she did her work and she advanced. And then our second kid, he was not ready. Like, I felt like he needed to go to school.
Okay, but time out. The first child was sort of social.
Yes.
The second child should run for president.
I agree.
Like, he's always social.
So he was not ready for school.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay. Here's the dilemma. And this is actually, me and Deborah, we don't fight much. Like, we don't have like those bickering fights like we don't get that much. Well, actually, now that we're older, we actually probably bicker a little bit more. But that's mainly because you forget stuff and I forget stuff and then I can't hear and you can't see. And it's like a combination of stuff. I think our fights today are more frustrating fights than anything.
I think so, because I can't remember what I did this morning.
Yeah, we don't really fight over issues a whole lot. But back in the day, this was an issue, and it's still kind of an issue today. But I think my lovely bride has come over to the dark side. I think she sees it more my way now. And my thing has always been about maturity. And children need time to mature. And the next podcast, we're going to be talking about kids and they're a product of their environment. And if you're a good parent, then if you're good parents, your kids need to be with the parents as long as possible to be influenced by those parents before they go out into the world and become influenced by other kids, other teachers, many other things that they'll be exposed to. And we've actually experienced this to where kids go to school too soon, they come back with new words, they come back biting, they come back hitting, they come back from school doing things that we didn't teach them at the house. Deborah and I have very distinctive reasons why we choose to send our kids to school at that particular time. But that's not really what we're here to share with you today. We are going to give you some insight into how we feel, but we want to give you some core facts because you might need just some basics on what to know when is a good time to send your child to school. And we're going to get to those facts in just a second, but first we need to thank our sponsor. Have you ever dreamed of owning your own business? Maybe you thought about franchises, but weren't quite sure which one's right for you? Well, let me tell you a little bit about Tiki. Tiki's is a shaved ice cream, and coffee franchise that started in Boca Raton, Florida, and now has expanded into multiple locations across the U.S. So what makes Tiki so special? Well, Tiki's offers unique products that people love. Shaved ice cream, and coffee. Not to mention their franchise model is low cost and easy to operate. Tiki's also provides extensive training and support to all their franchisees. So if you're looking for an opportunity to be your own boss, then I urge you to consider Tiki's franchising. Contact them today at tikisfranchising.com to learn more about the franchise.
Tiki's has been a fantastic business for us. You should check into it. An important factor, especially if you're going to start your child young, is potty training. Most schools do not take children that are not fully potty trained. One, it's very, very embarrassing for the child. And two, yes, the teacher has to clean it up.
And I would think, as a dad, I just don't want to put my child in that situation where a teacher, and I wouldn't want to put the teacher in that situation, where they have to be in that situation in case of going number 2.
Yeah, it's a big distraction. It's not only embarrassing for the child, but also for the teacher.
Yeah. And I don't think that's not what teachers sign up for. And we're not talking about a daycare. We're talking about like school.
Like starting kindergarten here. Kindergarten, first grade. So I feel like if your child is not fully or in our situation, if our child's not fully potty trained, I'm not going to send them to school. No. I will find another source of means for them.
Yeah.
Your child's personality. If your child is just the social little butterfly and is the most outgoing kid, he's probably or she's probably going to do fantastic, especially in the socialization part, because they're just going to they're going to find friends. They're going to be very active in class. They're going to be active on the playground, and they're going to enjoy going to school.
Is that so?
I think so.
Okay, because I don't know about your first day of kindergarten, and I don't really remember mine, but I do have this vague memory. My parents were out of town, and we were staying at my granny's house, who lived in Lacassine, which is 30 minutes away. My papa was a farmer, so he got up at 4 o'clock every day, no matter what. And I remember getting up super early in the dark. And I remember he had an old Chevy, I think it was a Chevy S10 or a Chevy something, it was an old truck. And I remember in the dark, and we drove all the way to school. And it was a long drive. And I remember his dial on his dash. That's when the dials, they had like these plastic cones that kind of shot out from the dial, which was like a way to help magnify the numbers on the dial. If, young people that are young listen to this, they're not going to understand, but older people will know what I'm talking about. On some of those old trucks, the dials, they had these glass cones on them. And I remember looking at that and seeing that old radio with the cassette. I don't know if it had a cassette or an 8-tracks. I don't know. It was like an 80 model something pickup truck. It had that distinctive smell to it. And I remember my first day of kindergarten, and I cried. I was miserable. I was like so miserable. I didn't want to be there. I was miserable. And as a dad, I always think, oh my gosh, my kids, I'm sending my kids to school. What if they feel, they're my kids, they're my offspring. So what if they feel the same way I felt? And I'm dropping my kids off in that situation, and it's very uncomfortable. And, but now the thinking about it, that it's something that has to be done. Me personally, I think that I wasn't ready to start school.
That brings up a story that I can remember, and it kind of goes back to starting a child early here too. Cole. Mm-hmm. Remember when Cole was little? And I was like, he's going to go to school. Yeah. Because he was 18 months old when West was born. And I was just like, West was number 3, and I just felt so overwhelmed. You were at work all day long. Like, you worked 6 days a week. And we decided to put Cole in school. And I would bring Cole to Mother's Day Out or Little Learners Montessori School. And I'd have to peel him off of me every day crying.
Mm-hmm.
He did not want to go. But as a young mom, thinking this was the right thing, I would send him to school every day. I don't think he was ready to leave yet. I think he wanted to be at home still because he was only like 2 and 3 years old. And I thought a Montessori school was going to be terrific for him.
Now, why did you think that?
That's how my brain worked. That's how I thought, like, he needs to be out. He needs socialization.
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So I think a lot of young parents think that way. And so if you're a young parent and you're listening to this, we used to think this way too. Like, we need to get that child out there. He needs to be with other little children. And I'm going to tell you right now, where we are now, that is completely and absolutely wrong. The best place for your child is with you, as long as possible. Because think about it. Children are products of their environment. So if you're trying to be a good parent and you're trying to raise a honest, ethical, moral, respectful child, but yet you send him into an environment to where the other kids may not have that same mindset, then you're going to get back a disrespectful, angry, upset all the time, little kid. And we don't think that way anymore. Like, we delay as long as we can to send our kids to school.
No, Cole turned out fine.
No, Cole.
He is definitely our social little butterfly now.
That's because we, as parents, have more influence on them than the school ever had.
Well, of course.
Because we're involved.
Of course.
Yeah.
But we've learned over the years, starting a child early in school is not the best for them.
Why do you think as young parents we thought that way? Like, we got to get them in school. We got to do this.
Now, that's what society said.
Well, I didn't always think that way as much, but I also kind of did. But I was more along the lines, they need to be at home longer.
Society says, hey, it's time for your kid to go to school. They need to go to school. They need to learn. And as we grew older, I realized, that's not true.
Yeah.
They need to be home with mom and dad.
I think so. I think personality, like basic things like potty training. We didn't mention other stuff like, can they like feed themselves? some kids, like we have one right now. She's 2 years old and the only thing this child eats is boudin. And we're good parents. But this child will only eat boudin. And some kids are just kind of like that. They go through, they have to grow and develop in all sorts of aspects. So, like basic things like potty training, can they feed themselves? Can they communicate well? Some kids don't communicate well. Can they communicate to the teachers or the administrators, hey, I have a problem, or hey, I need this, or whatever. So, those basic things and that kind of all, but potty training is like a big red flag. Don't send your kid to school until they're fully potty trained. It's not fair to the parent. It's not fair to the teacher. It's not fair to the child. But then also all those other things too. And the personality. The personality is probably the most important part of when to send your child to school. And it may actually be opposite. The kids that are kind of in their shell may need to go to school sooner. Because Alyssa wasn't a socialite. When she was little, she was kind of reserved.
She was very reserved. We started her really early, though.
But when she went into school, she became a socialite. But then at some points, she wasn't really into all the friends and stuff. But now she's in college, graduating. She's the president of a sorority, and she's like Miss
top of her class.
So, but each kid is different. But the main thing is we keep them at home longer now. And we feel that it is the absolute best thing for the child. And then also picking the right school for your child. Like we sent Cole to a Montessori school.
Alyssa and Cole went to Montessori school.
I remember Cole couldn't pour rice. I'm like,
no, he poured rice.
Oh,
That's all he did.
He could only pour rice. Yeah, that was
like Alyssa went on. She learned all the Mozarts and the arts and she knew how to read and she excelled. She wanted to do more. And then we sent Cole and half the year went by and they're like, okay, well, all he wants to do is pour rice.
Hey, if you're good at something, stick with it.
Like, that's all he would do. Like, he's like, I'm not going to, like, overachieve myself here. We're just going to be the basic. So Montessori was not for him.
Mm-mm.
It was great for Alyssa, but for Cole, it was not for Cole. When he went on to a more structured school where you do this, 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 and this, he did great.
And there's a big difference between private, parochial, and public school. You know, private school can be expensive, but in those early years, it can also be pretty important for those kids, especially if it's a religious type school. You know, because if you send your kids somewhere every day, they're going to learn how to read, write, and they're going to learn other stuff too. You know, what do you want them to learn is the next thing.
We have talked about a few different points on when children should start school today and how Jareth and I feel about starting our kids. And basically, it's up to you. You have to know your child. You have to be with your child. You need to go by how they are developing on when you feel is the right time to start school.
But in general thinking, our best advice is it needs to be delayed as long as possible, because the best place for your child is with you. And the best influence they should have should be with you. And obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you are either a good parent because you're seeking information like this, or you're a parent that is trying to be better. Bad parents normally don't look around the internet trying to find things that they could improve on. That's not what they're looking for. And that's what their kids aren't looking for, that kind of stuff. Their kids are bringing negative things to your child.
So whether you're trying to decide between private, public, Montessori, homeschool, it's a decision you'll have to make. And we hope today we have touched on a few points to help you make that decision. So if you enjoyed our podcast today, please like it, share it with family and friends.
And if you missed our previous one, it was on cooking at home versus eating out. And our next one will probably tie into this podcast more than we expected. And the next one is kids are products of their environment. So while you're out there doing your best, you know, raising your family, working, doing everything you can to live your best, absolute full life, remember, life's a journey.
Enjoy the ride.
Did you enjoy the podcast? Would you like to sponsor a podcast? If you're looking to advertise your brand, product, or message, our platforms are the best place to do it. We reach a large and engaging audience, and we can help you get your message out there. If you want to learn more about how you can advertise with us, visit us at thefulllifecrew.com/shop. So thank you once again for listening and tuning into our podcast. And just remember, while you're out there trying to live your absolute best full life, life's a journey. Enjoy the ride.